Welcome back to the Better Stack podcast. I'm your host, James, and I'm joined by...
Hi, Richard.
Hi, Andres.
In this show, we cover a lot of cool stuff being built online, and this week we're actually joined by a special guest, and we are joined by Ben, who recently launched a new startup called Spec. Ben, can you introduce yourself and explain a little bit about what Spec is?
Of course. Nice to meet you guys. My name is Ben, founder of Spec. Spec is an intelligence layer over your digital life. So on your Mac today, soon on your iPhone, hopefully in the next few years on your smart glasses, but it learns everything about you and practically helps you.
That sounds really cool. Can you give sort of a quick example of something that would help a lot? Because I saw some of the demos on the website of like you would text someone saying, let's get dinner, and it proactively explores like looking at restaurants nearby. I think that's the key selling point of Spec, is it the sort of proactiveness?
Absolutely, yeah. So Spec plugs into all the corners of your digital life. So that's iMessage, WhatsApp, your email, your Slack, your Notion, your Apple Notes, your browser history, and general screen time on your Mac. And basically through this, it builds an ongoing context about your life. So it understands who you are on a high level, and then zooming down to your everyday. So for example, today, the meetings I have a dinner tonight, focus on AI. And then I, of course, have this podcast with you guys. And Spec proactively looked at all of those meetings and those this podcast, and it wrote up sort of preparation for myself, specifically in the context of this meeting. So it actually brings in the context that Yirai introduced us. It brings in it went and watched some of your videos actually, so it knows the content of your video. We'll walk through it. I think it's that's one example, literally from today, of what it can do. It prepares you for your meetings. It can draft the responses to messages and emails. It can analyze meeting transcripts. So if you have a call, sales call, it can analyze how well the sales call went, things you could have said better, and pulling in the context of your other calls as well, give you feedback. So
yeah, no, that was the really cool thing when you first showed me the demo, was the proactive piece, because obviously ChatGPT is you're always going there to find an answer, whereas Spec, it felt like it already had the answer to some of the things that I wanted solved, and yeah, it was ready there for me straight away. So it was definitely very cool. I'm very curious about what it sort of got from watching our videos and yeah, the summary of the podcast.
I can screen share. We can get into it if you'd like. Just give a quick demo of this.
Cool. Let's jump in and show everyone what Spec is.
So Spec is running right now. I have obviously different apps that are open here. It's running in the top menu bar. You trigger it by double tapping Command. So I double tap Command. Now it's here in the middle of the screen, and the message from an hour ago says Better Stack podcast happens in an hour with James, Richard, Andres on Riverside. James tested Spec yesterday, and the context is fully prepared. And then it has some information about my meetings later today. Pulled in the Riverside link. So if we jump in here to the podcast prep. Spec, I didn't prompt it to do this. I did prompt it. I read through this and I prompted it because it found, James, your sign up on the wait list from October 1st. And I said, remove, it pulled in your phone number. I was like, remove his phone number. But Spec proactively use its web browser, use the context, emails, messages, and everything to build this context to prepare me for this. Podcast, same through your guys' introduction on September 20th. James reached out expressing interest in the channel. We had our pre-call on September 23rd. So like all the context leading up to this, it pulls in context on you, on your background, your time zone.
No, it's accurate. Can confirm.
It went through Better Stack as a company, recent podcast topics, our relationship history. So it's really cool if you're having you're in your second or third meeting interviewing someone to potentially hire, or for myself, if I'm having like an investor call, it'll bring in that context from all those calls up to that point. Insights, so your audience, the developer audience, timing, leverage, recording versus fundraising creates natural storytelling tension. I suppose privacy angle. We can talk about that, but there's like a very specific way Spec has been designed to be about as private as it can possibly be. Founder authenticity. You've been grinding with 1.5 hours of sleep to ship.
Wow. Have you slept?
Is that actually true?
Is that true? Yeah.
That is true. I did sleep last night because I finally was sharing Spec out to people as of last night and this morning. Wow. So Yeah, so everything it pulls into here is actual facts. It's for my messages. It builds this full context on me throughout the day, and it's pulling in that context then with this other context into here. Um, Start with the visceral why now moment, waking up to 47 tabs, 12 unread thread notifications, realizing your brain is doing the work computers should do. It pitches spec often better than I pitch it. Sometimes it's just its level of creativity is remarkable.
Yeah. Well, it's learned everything from you already, so it can yeah, it can be the better AI version.
Absolutely, yeah. Talks about the architecture. How does spec differ from other AI assistants? I think you already touched on this, the context as well. How are you thinking about monetization? Um, yeah, and it pulls in the references, everything. Acknowledge James personally.
Thank you.
UK time zone. It's 8 p.m. London's time for James. Acknowledge the evening recording and thank you for making time. Thank you for making
Yeah,
time,
no, that's
James.
no worries. Thank you very much. And I mean, thanks for getting Spec to do all of the work for us. We'll just ask all of the questions that Spec says to ask, and yeah, that'd be great.
There's a cool thing I'll show off here.
Yep.
Which is just some of what we mentioned, the pre-written messages. So it actually goes through these connected channels. So messages, for me, my iMessage, Gmail, and Slack, and it's able to see what messages actually warrant a response, and then draft a response as a result. In this example, it created this draft here, and if I just press go over here and I click Command D, it'll paste in that response here. I can edit it if I want to. Same thing for Slack, same thing for Gmail.
So yeah, it sort of felt like to me almost, as developers know, like cursor for everything on your Mac. It was, yeah, you just get.
I would love for that to be that. I would love for it to be that. Yeah, absolutely.
My question is, where does it retain all this data? Is it like a local vector database that it's storing, or how does it work?
Absolutely. Yeah. So Spec, I made a decision very early on that the architecture has to be like just absurdly privacy first at all costs. So because it touches the most private parts of your life, right? So it's pulling in your notes that you've written you only thought you would read, but now Spec's reading it, or your messages you're sending between you and one other person. So everything is stored locally, and the only time it leaves your device is to be processed by an AI provider. Of course, you'll have permissions to choose what data it does and doesn't touch. But our goal is basically there should be no moment where you ever question where your data is and who owns it and who's seeing it, right? We're starting out now early, but my goal is working with providers that we work with today. It's Anthropic and OpenAI, is to do specific contracts with them that allow us to ensure that our data is being processed more private than even it already is today, which it already is private. It's already not being saved by them. But, the goal is to be the most privacy first AI product in the world. Because I think we have to be. I think that has to be the kind of agreement and the public agreement we have with all of our users.
Yeah, no, this was actually one of the pieces when I first tried it. I said to the guys, like, wow, this knows a lot about my life. Like, I hope I trust the privacy policy in you, which I, obviously do. I actually asked Spec about it itself, like where the data was, and it was quite truthful that it was all local first. And like,
yes,
I was actually able to go into my Mac and see some of where it was storing it. And I was like, okay, it's giving me a bit more safety.
Here's the file. Great.
Didn't lie about
That's
it.
Awesome.
Basically, it was it just answered it, and because it has access to all of my Mac, it was able to even go and find its own files, which was very cool.
That's awesome.
So yeah, I think that's one of the pieces that's quite cool about Spec is the way that you've built it to integrate with sort of the entire Mac operating system, so that you're able to connect with all of these apps without needing individual APIs for all of them. Can you expand a bit more on that?
Absolutely. Yeah. So the design is meant to be, as you saw in the onboarding is pretty straightforward, but we just ask for a few permissions, permission to see your screen, permission to pull in accessibility. So like, for example, and we have a lot of ways we're going to use this in the future, but accessibility gives Spec knowledge about what apps you're using and when. And then the really core one is having access to your disk. So giving full disk access allows Spec to plug into your messages, plug into your WhatsApp, plug into your Apple Notes. And so there are some applications that we do use direct APIs with, like Slack. Of course, Gmail, when you sign in with Gmail, and that pulls in your emails and your calendar and all the Google suite of data. But yeah, the goal is like I believe this sort of product has to start on Mac. Particularly like I'm based in the US, and in the US, like we don't use WhatsApp as much. We use almost iMessage for almost everything. And your iMessages are on your Mac. They're on your iPhone too, but iPhone is a pretty locked down, thankfully, with sort of like SDKs. You're not allowed to do deep disk control there. Yeah. But yeah, that's the approach. That's what allows us actually to get browser data as well. So it's interesting. You see products like um, some of these new AI browsing products where you switch over from Chrome to another browser. I think they're good products, but with Spec, it's actually like we have the same level of like understanding of the user just from getting this as well. So we kind of are able to then pull in that context without asking you to switch to a different product. And maybe I'll touch on that for a minute. I think what our goal with Spec is like, you shouldn't switch up your sort of daily routines. And we're not necessarily asking you today to switch up the apps you use, because I think that's always such a big ask for people, right? Cursor, I think you mentioned kind of cursor everything, which I hope we can achieve that level of at least part of that level of success. But Cursor, I think, was brilliant in that they forked VS Code, right? A lot of other companies were building products where they said, we're going to build a new IDE. And it's like, do I really want a new IDE? I think I like my IDE, but, if I can have an AI that sort of helping me with this part and this part. And you saw this with Cursor. It started with tab to complete. And then as soon as the elements became agentic, that product expanded into more and more and more. And so that's kind of the same core idea a bit with Spec. It's that, okay, can we plug in as an OS level AI? Really, it's an app that you install, but fundamentally, it's bringing intelligence to the operating system deeply and thoughtfully in a way where Spec can just plug in to your life today and just start helping you out. And just start, for example, this meeting, pulling in notes about how the topics that we should discuss, or my dinner tonight, who I should talk to at that dinner, and what I should say, without me having to go manually switch to a new application to use every day.
Yeah, it felt a bit like what Siri and Copilot always should be, but they're seemingly never there, and they seem to
Wonderful.
be a bit of a mess of an experience. So
right.
Yeah, I really liked, as you mentioned, the current experience with AI seems that every app wants to have its own like chatbot and AI experience, like Notion AI. And you switch over to Cursor, then you switch over to like Gmail's one, whereas Spec, it was like just do everything here. We can do it here. And that was one thing I really liked, was sort of centralizing the place that I can just talk to the AI and it knows everything already without me having to use like WhatsApp's Meta AI to summarize my messages and then go somewhere else to do something. So yeah, I definitely liked that piece.
Another beautiful thing we have that I should have mentioned is we also plug into Granola as well locally. So your meeting transcripts, Spec pulls in that meeting transcript, understands what you talked about in the meeting. And so, for example, like since we announced Spec a few weeks ago, I've been in a lot of investor calls because there's been a lot of excitement, which has been great. Spec actually like proactively went through all the different transcripts of that. And then on one of my more recent calls last week, it said, look, I went through some of these other investor calls, and here's what's resonated strongest, and here's what has not resonated as strongly. So there's an interesting thing you can imagine there. Again, proactive intelligence, it understands you as personality, and it pulls in that transcript as well. It can help you become better with sales, or help you become better simply with like having meetings with your team. Like my mom has asked for this product for herself. She works on the IT team at a hospital back in Tennessee, and sometimes she's working with people where like some of the relationships are stronger. Some of them she has to navigate better. She says that she will ask ChatGPT for this. She'll try to feed in, to ChatGPT context about this person she's working with and ask it for help. And to me, I kind of say like ChatGPT by comparison is kind of like a palm reader, or maybe it's like your therapist, and that if you go to your therapist and you say, my girlfriend sucks, or you go to, your ChatGPT, my girlfriend sucks, like she won't listen to me. Okay, then it'll say, well, here's how maybe you should navigate that. But for Spec, you could say, my girlfriend sucks, and it will read the text with your girlfriend and say, well, she said, ask you to do this, buy this at the grocery store, and you forgot, you didn't apologize. So maybe that's part of, the reason for the conflict, right?
Yeah, one of on that note, one of the first things the like spec summary said about me was like you have a nice relationship with your girlfriend, and she was next to me reading that, and I was like, phew. It's like you can pick out anything else from the messages. It's like great.
Yeah, if you lead a
Yeah,
dishonest life, maybe don't use spec because I
yeah,
don't know, could expose you.
yeah. No, that would be an awkward one. Yeah, maybe hide the spec screen when it comes up because it does. Yeah,
Right.
it will know everything if you let it. So
Yes. Yeah.
I was going to ask, what was the inspiration behind Spec, and how did you go about starting to build it?
Totally. So, Spec is my third startup. I built two startups previously. One was in focus on building access for multifamily buildings, for apartment buildings. And then the second one was focused on building an all-in-one credit card for consumers. Because in the US, we have a lot of different card systems. And so the idea was, how can we help you just pay with one card and route to the best card in your wallet for the points or cash back? So I've kind of had like the theme and the things that I've worked on is like, how can I make something like your daily experience is better in ways that maybe today you're not going to ask for, but if we show it to you, you're going to love it, right? And it'll become core to how you live your life every day. So that's kind of been my through line for things I've worked on. And originally, this company started and was funded to do robotics. I came back to San Francisco at the end of last year and met with some of my smartest friends, and they were building robotics. And I started reading some of these papers about the advancements in general purpose robotics. And I thought that maybe um, this field has advanced enough to bring those sort of general purpose robots into the multifamily environment. So I wanted to go back to selling to apartment owners and put robots in apartment buildings. And I quickly learned, making some friends at certain robotics companies, that safety around robots and humans has not been solved. Like, as cool as all the demos are today, like these robots are first being deployed in factories or these sorts of like spaces where they're not directly with humans. And so I think like, to me, I was like, this isn't going to happen this year, but I think a lot will happen in AI this year. So I should just pivot intentionally away from this towards something else. And so I actually just dropped working on robotics, started meeting with a bunch of other friends who were working on interesting things, and started experimenting with LLMs. And I had this idea of like, oh, there's a new LLM from China that can kind of do pretty interesting computer use capabilities. If I put this on a virtual machine on my Mac, it could control like a copy of my Mac on my Mac. And so it just started more almost like developer focused, because I put like this LLM with Claude at the time 3.7 onto my virtual machine on my Mac, and it started doing pretty interesting coding tasks, and it could control the browser, and it could do a lot of things just from terminal, because LLMs are so text first. And that's where I started. And then something happened in May where the new 4.0 models from Anthropic came out. So Sonnet 4.0 and Opus 4.0. And I had that, and I had the integration with iMessage working in the virtual machine. And I said, hey, read my iMessages over the past month and tell me what you know about me. Tell me where I am. Tell me what I'm focused on. And I think I used Opus. Opus read it, and it said, okay, here's where you live. Here's where you're focused on right now. This is your girlfriend's name. Here's where you are. You're going here in 3 days. You're trying to negotiate this right now with this person. And I was like, this is crazy. Like this machine understands me. And I kind of started going down that path around June then, where I said, I'm going to drop the virtual machine, go straight for building sort of a intelligence layer on Mac that installs and plugs into everything. And so this version of Spec that James, that you've used and that's now out is basically was kind of reborn in June. So basically everything you're seeing has been built since June. And that's basically the journey of how I got here.
That's cool. I think you're the first person who's given Opus all their personal data to get information about them. But it's cool. It's like at this point.
Yeah.
no, I think the robotics startup was particularly interesting. I'm sure Andrews would have loved that one because he's covered a few videos recently on the field of robotics and robot AI. Can you see Spec ever becoming a personal assistant as a robot?
I've pre-ordered one of the humanoid robots. I don't have it yet, but I pre-ordered one of them a few months ago because I'm really fascinated with this idea of like, if Spec could control that. Obviously, we think of these like intelligences as kind of like Robbie the robot, and like Robbie's contained within the robot. But the future I see is like you have an intelligence, and hopefully it's Spec. That's what I'm spending all my time working towards. But you're gonna have an intelligence that like is sort of your interface to the digital world. And I guess with robots, it becomes interface as well to different parts of the physical world, but or self-driving cars. But yeah, I imagine a future where Spec actually can. Maybe you still have Robbie the robot, but then Spec tells Robbie the robot what to do. Like Spec is Robbie the robot's boss.
Yeah.
But I think we're gonna have this personal intelligence that like, and you've kind of seen the glimpse of this, like it understands you super deeply, and I think that is kind of the launch pad for building proactive intelligence. Like you first have to understand, it has to understand the user on a deep level, personally, professionally, understand their personality, their writing style, understand like how much sleep they got last night, right? And through this, you can help people with work, you can help them with their personal life, and then if you have a robot in your space, like it can start cooking you breakfast before you wake up because it knows when you're going to wake up, and it knows that you have a busy meeting today, you have to be at the door by 9. So that's kind of the future I see. I think it's like we're headed for like a world where we go from a transactional relationship with our devices and our websites and our apps to a relationship with an intelligence that becomes the interface to the digital parts of our lives.
I like the idea of, as you said, sort of putting everything in one sort of AI system. Because at the moment, like the world has a lot of data on us. We wear smartwatches that can do fitness. There's smart beds now that track how you sleep. But everything's sort of contained in its own app. So it's nice when, something can get a sort of overview of everything going on in your life and then piece the pieces together and, see all of those different avenues and come up with some cool insights based on that. So, I definitely like the vision. As I said, when you sort of first showed it to me, I was like, I've actually wanted this for a while. And I tried to build it myself personally once with like Claude to tie into Notion and various other things. But I think I gave up because I was busy with some other stuff. And then you came about and showed me the demo, and I was like, that's pretty cool.
How did you come up with the name Spec?
Oh, that's it. This is a great one. So the name Spec is not from 2025. It's actually from 2020, or maybe even 2019, but definitely 2020. So in 2020, I sold my first startup, and then COVID happened. I had some free time, or a lot of free time, right? I mean, I was actually back home in Tennessee at my friend's house while I started at working at the acquiring company. And so I had this idea that it actually was Spec, but it was 5 years ago, Spec. And this was like obviously pre-LLMs. And so I had this idea, at the time Superhuman was really popular, and I love Superhuman. I love the aesthetic of Superhuman, this idea of like email is something that everyone uses, but we all accepted that it's awful and we have to sit in this inbox every day. And Superhuman came along and was like, it can be fun. It can be like a game. You can have this cool little like aesthetic picture of a bird in the background when you complete, like swiping through all your emails. And so I had this idea of like, cool, I love Superhuman. What if I could do a Superhuman for your phone calls? What would that look like, right? And so I started experimenting with a lot of like, there was very early actually SDKs from Apple for on-device transcription. They had just launched it, so it could take voice and transcribe it. And this idea of like, if you could intercept the phone call on your device, you could transcribe it, and then even with some of the AI that was available at the time, you could do interesting things with it. Maybe you could pull out what someone needs to do based on what they said on a phone call. You could create a summary. And so the name I came up with for this product was Spectacular. The name was Spectacular. And so like, and I built like a very early version of prototype of this. And I showed it to my friends, and they were like, oh, you should go do this. You should go do this. And I almost did, but I decided to not pursue it full time then. But one of my best friends, my friend Robert, who has been my first investor on every company I've done, he came up with the name Spec because I kept telling him Spectacular, and he called it Spec at one point. And so that's where the name came from. This current company, I founded it under a different name entirely because I was going to do robots. And as I decided to go build this product Spec, that name came back. And I think it's because spiritually it's the same idea. That idea was focused on your phone calls, but it's like, could you have an AI kind of understand your communications and like help you with things? And there's some ideas around productivity, but it just definitely would not have worked back in 2020. But that name became immediately so obvious for this, right? I was like, this needs to be Spec. And also there's just not, it's one of those names that really has not been used with any sort of popular tech product or AI product. And so to me, it just feels like the future to me a little bit. Levels.io had a really cool tweet when Elon renamed Twitter to X, where he's like, you may hate the name X, but like X sounds like the future. Like think about the future, we're chatting on this platform X. And so that also lived in my mind of like a name should be something that feels like the future. Also with Spec, there's this idea in my mind of like, a lot of AI companies are building like these AI employee products. Will say Harry, the salesman, or John, the assistant. And I actually believe like AI should not be personified as humans for the most part. That's actually one of my core ideas. I think it should be like a Tinkerbell. It should be like the little sidekick when you start like Halo, like like Cortana or like Cortana, I guess is human, but like I think of Borderlands, like these other games you play where you have a little like pop up that says, "Hey," and I think like that should be the future we live in. Is that we have this little like Tinkerbell, little like tutorial guidance, that intelligence that pops up with us throughout all of our lives. Hey, you should do this. And when in the future when we're wearing smart glasses, Spec can say, "Hey, you should text her back."
It reminds me of everything that Clippy wanted to be.
Yeah, Clippy is a good example. Yeah, like kind of like a intelligent but non-human sidekick, because I think that's how we should probably, in many ways, in my mind, that's I think a beautiful way we can have relationships with AI, because a real core, I believe, for me of Spec is that if Spec can respond to our emails and like prepare us for meetings, do like hours of prep every day for meetings that otherwise we couldn't have done or would have taken us time, if it can organize our lives on the digital front, it gives us the ability to kind of step back and have more time with each other, right? In the morning when we wake up right now, you unlock your phone and you're just like, okay, oh my God, there's like 40 emails, there's like Slack, especially when you work. I mean, when you're working kind of with folks in different time zones, this becomes like so difficult because you wake up with so many notifications. And you're immediately on this digital treadmill or a digital hamster wheel. You're like running. And we've all accepted this is reality. Like if we want to be a part of, doing digital work and like being, having great social lives, this is the contract, the invisible contract we've all signed. And so my goal for Spec is like, I think there's like the good ending to the movie. There's like a possible like good outcome here where like, instead of this future where we have more apps and we have more AI apps, and now we have like 30 apps more because of AI, we have an intelligence that manages this for us. And of course we can go in and plug it in at any time that we want, but now instead of opening our phones and like scrolling through and having to immediately grok all this information and figure it out what the priority should be for that day, you can just go across the street to the cafe and sit down and have espresso and like even leave your phone if you want and like think about like, who do I want to be as a person a year from now? Like, what life do I want to have? Like, what hobbies could I pick up if I have more time? Can I go paint? Can I go read a book, right? Can I go spend more time with friends this weekend? Because I have time to think about it now. So that's kind of the vision with Spec and the future I want to build with this.
I love the vision from AI companies that have that sort of mindset where it's like, stop trying to use AI like Sora does to try and take away the creative stuff. It's like, take away the mundane stuff that we have to do and just sort of everyday regular tasks that can be simplified with AI, and then, give us humans more time to do the stuff we love. So, I like the vision.
Yeah. Thank you.
So when you shared your screen, Spec said you only had 1.5 hours of sleep, or like one night or something. Are you working on Spec mostly, or is there a team, or what's the setup?
So I have one other person, Jaya, who's phenomenal, who's working on the team. I worked with some other friends, sort of part-time on the design. So some of the UX and then the branding. My friend Jamie did the branding. I think she did a phenomenal job. But yeah, it's me and one other person right now full-time. So like everything you've seen and used with the product, James, is everything that I built. This is why I'm sleeping 1.5 hours a night. But basically right now we're in a moment where like I'm in the middle of a fundraising situation right now, and also talking to some really incredible engineers I would like to bring on board to the company. I think for me, it was important actually to build this myself, the first version, partially because it's kind of almost like to me, it's kind of like art in a sense. Like it really is like, I want to paint the version of the future that I want sort of for myself and my friends and my family and, you know, and that's kind of where it starts. Obviously, companies have to scale beyond this, but I think it's kind of like I wanted to carefully like plant that seed and like watch the sprout grow a little bit before adding more fertilizer and water to it. And the other thing is that I think like great engineer, like we're in a weird moment where like there's a lot of funding to do a lot of different things in AI, and the greatest people I've met who are, you know, the most talented people I've met are people who say like, you know, I want to work with great people and I want to work on products that are real. I want to work on something that can like deliver the vision that has been painted for it. And I think with Spec, like honestly, understandably, I think a lot of people a few months ago I met and friends of mine were like, this sounds great. And I was told directly, like, this sounds great. I have not seen anyone do this yet. Like, get back to me when you've done it, right? Or when you can show that it's possible. Because there's a lot of teams trying to build something like this, right? And from what I know, this is the first product that is now starting to make its way into the world that can build this level of context on an individual. And so, like, I wanted to show that first. And I think that's kind of why now I can share the product with engineers I love to work with and say, hey, go try this. And then let's talk, right?
Yeah, I'm curious what the launch strategy has been behind it, because obviously we saw you sort of went with a public launch where everything was sort of announced on Twitter, but is it still a wait list, and is there plans to sort of get everyone to be able to have access?
Yeah, so still a wait list, and you know, this week is when sort of the first invites have gone out, and basically, you know, with especially with a product like this, there's a bit of a challenge in that it's so private that I have a bit of a hard time debugging it like I would other products I built before. Like if it was a web-based product, I can like see your environment, I can simulate it right here, right now. With this product, it's so private. Like I don't know what Spec told you, James. You're telling
Yeah.
me. I don't know. Hopefully good things, right? Hopefully you're
Yeah,
having
it's
a great
nice to hear
experience
that
with it.
though.
Yeah, I mean, like I literally don't.
Yeah,
There's
I'm
no, so
sorry it's
like,
painful for you, but I do like hearing that it's private. So
and I think it's so crucially like deeply important to the DNA of the whole company, right? And to the DNA of the future we want to build with this company and the product. But to that end, like I'm trying to be a bit meticulous. We're trying to be a bit meticulous with how we think about scaling it out to people. Um, you know, I like my friends who are, you know, across different industries, if it's like sales or if it's like them being a founder. A lot of developer friends have asked for this because I think developers in general, uh, you're getting pinged on Slack, you're getting asked to find something or explain something, and it's a little bit obnoxious. And maybe you don't have as many meetings as someone else in a different role would, but like even if you do, like, you know, whatever helps you, I think, like focus on what you want to focus on and kind of like get at least assistance, if not sort of automation with those parts in a way that helps your colleagues, but also keeps you focused. I think it's useful. Basically, like I've had friends across these different areas all asking me for the product. I still have friends I've not sent it to who have been asking me for the product. I'm trying to be a bit meticulous with how we think about scaling it out. But assuming it scales out nicely, like my goal will be early next year to do a general release of the product. But I think you're gonna hear a lot more from us now because we're getting the product in people's hands. I think people will be talking about it. We're gonna keep responding to and adding features leading up to full launch. At the full launch, it will not just live on your Mac; it will live beyond your Mac. So there's like other ways we're thinking about that, and there's from a technical perspective, cool ways that we're going to do sort of like data syncing between devices in a way that's as secure as Signal or Telegram. So yeah, basically like that's how I'm thinking about the launch. I want to make sure it's great before we kind of blast it out to everyone. But definitely there's been since we put it on Twitter, a lot of interest and a lot of positivity. I think that was the thing I was most shocked by. Often when you put something out on the internet, even if it's a great product, you're going to get like people upset about various ideas of what they think it is, or what ideas of what they think it represents. And with Spec, there was like, I don't want to jinx myself here. There was for the future, but there was like very little negativity, and there was a lot of people saying, "Wow, I'm glad people are building things with AI that are going in this direction. That are not just trying to take my attention, but give it back to me." And so that was really inspiring and gave us a lot of energy for knowing that directionally this is exactly where it should be.
Do you feel comfortable elaborating a bit on the tech side of things? Since you built it, you kind of know
Of
the ins
course.
and outs. So what did you use to build it? What's syncing the data, or what's going to sync the data?
Yeah. So it's a Swift app, which is also kind of allows for a few things. One is like with Swift on Mac, you kind of get full access, unfettered access versus like building with a different framework. And what's cool with Swift is it also compiles to iPhone. This is what allows us to go beyond the Mac soon. We're going to have things that we're planning to show off with this. That'd be really cool. Like I mentioned, it connects to all your different communication apps. It uses some APIs to connect to other services like Slack or Gmail. You want to be respectful to these like platforms because we want to work with them long term. With our plans to kind of scale Spec up in a major way. And so, yeah, it plugs into those applications in that way. Everything is locally stored and locally encrypted. So if there's another app on your machine that also gets full disk access and then tries to somehow access the data from Spec, it can't. If you click delete data when you sign out, your data gets completely deleted. Everything's gone. Period. Spec has its own sandbox. I don't know if you saw this, James, and you're experimenting, but it has its own sandbox where it can create files. And I added a few things there already that are pretty cool. For example, Spec can create like entire Excel workbooks. So like beyond like ChatGPT can create like CSVs, Spec can create like entire like workbooks. It created a whole financial model for the company with like formulas that were all plugged into the various tabs, which was really cool. Separate thing it did, I had to go through my email and find all the signed documents where I've signed investment documents with investors, download all of them, read all of them, and then take all the data and put that into an Excel sheet. And it did all that in one go. And so it has like local file access on that way as well. It can only write to its sandbox, and it cannot delete any files. It can send iMessages. You can send iMessages from Spec's interface. It can send Slack messages. It can send Gmail. It cannot send any of these without you clicking a button today. So it's hardwired out of the LLM. I learned that lesson early on when I had first plugged in Gmail and it had the ability to send it. I said, "Can you draft this message?" And the Anthropic models, I love them. I love them, but sometimes they have a bit of a YOLO tendency. I told that to someone yesterday at Anthropic. So it was like, cool, I sent it. And I'm like, oh my God. And it sent the email when it just was supposed to use the draft tool, use the send tool. And so I was like, this needs to be like hardwired out for now. And so, yeah, there's like sort of fundamentally from an architectural standpoint, like it's really designed to not have any sort of like ability today to negatively affect your life, but it can proactively do things. It can use the web browser to look up information about your meetings and draft you a document about that. But it can't like delete your documents, and it can draft you great emails, but it can't delete your emails. And so, yeah, I think that kind of maybe covers like through the local disk access, it has the ability to read across a lot of different things. Like I mentioned, browser history, which the browser history thing, it's almost like it's interesting by itself when you cross-section it with sort of data from other things. It's able to tell like basically when I go to sleep and when I wake up from this. It's able to tell like if I'm interested in traveling somewhere by seeing what I'm searching. And so there's something that we'll bring to Spec very soon, which is it'll have the ability very soon to sort of see this behavior. Like you're searching for a trip to Japan and maybe you look at a hotel website next and you're looking for certain dates. And Spec can say, hey, I see you're doing this. Let me just go search for this for you on my web browser every day. And then I'll tell you about new things I find. If you want me to set an alert when the price drops, I can do that too. And so there's a lot of things there that I think are like kind of enabled by this approach. Maybe I went a little bit tangential there, but that's the architecture. Local, Swift, no immediate plans to go on platforms that are outside the Apple ecosystem. But of course,
Sure.
at some point we will. But to me, the context lives on the Mac for your digital life today, and so that's the place that I think makes the most sense to start.
I'm curious if there's a world where you think you would use local LLM models as well. Or do you think they're not sort of there yet to give the sort of context overview that Spec needs?
Great. Yeah. Not in this, the build that you have doesn't have this, but very soon, I'll be incorporating those.
Okay.
The way that Spec is kind of architected on the LLM level is that there's various services that run in the background. I think some people would call this agents. I like calling them services because they're just, I think an agent is kind of open-ended. Like the real definition of an agent should be like a very open-ended into AI is able to do things. And a service is a pretty directional thing. So it's an agentic service called agentic services that are able to do things like prepare you for meetings or draft messages, things of this nature. But of course, when you get like text messages or an email, like Spec needs to be able to see this in real time and figure out what context is this relevant to and should I react to it, right? And so this is where I think local LLMs play like a really amazing part because if I have local LLM write like do an agentic sort of research for my meetings, it could possibly do it, but it would not be high quality. The context window is small, so it can't like crunch all this context into a single document like the Anthropic models can or the OpenAI models can. But given distilled context, which is what Spec has with its living context engine under the hood, you can intelligently attach distilled context about an email thread that we have about this podcast, for example, to the context of an email you sent where you said, hey, can we meet tomorrow at 12 p.m.? And then the local model could process this and figure out, oh, this is something that needs to be responded to. And categorically, it's asking about availability. And categorically, I'm available this time based on my calendar that Spec has built. So that's kind of how I see it. I do think like there's a really exciting version of the future where like maybe, with how Apple's going more in this direction of like building more and more powerful like intelligence focused chips on the devices. Like the newest iPhone can like run their local models extraordinarily fast. I would love to be able to have a switch on Spec where you can turn on a purely local LLM to do everything. And I think it could do a decent job. Like, GPT OSS, I think is a pretty good model as an example. But I think for the for like the user that we expect to use it today, I think they want the highest fidelity sort of outputs. And that comes from having these like latest state of the art models for like things like the meeting prep or things of that nature. Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose with local models as well, as we said, you're sort of limited by the device the user's on, and you have to be on like the latest Apple M chip to really sort of have it be a quick experience.
The architecture in that way that I see that we will soon incorporate will be very Cursor-esque, right? Because Cursor does this. They send context from the coding where your task off to the larger model. Then the more local models do like smaller implementations or smaller reads. So you'll see that when you're using Cursor, it'll say the large model will ask the smaller model like a query, where is this stored in the code base? And the local model will then, it's like LLMs talking to LLMs. It'll then search the code base, then give it answers to then have it decide what to do, right? And so that is it's kind of like that's kind of architecture for Spec, but a little bit inverted where like the local models could kind of kick off certain processes based on the distilled context with this text that you get. And local models will be able to process every text. So you're actually doing a lot of inference, but it's kind of like low stakes 0 or 1 inference versus help me prepare for my call with James today. Right.
When you're saying that it does all these operations proactively, is it like running background tasks all the time while your Mac is open? How does it work technically?
So yes, basically like when the app is like open on your Mac, even when you have the window closed, we kind of wanted to design in a way where like you can summon the window when you want to see it, but otherwise you can dismiss it. The spec will still be running. There's certain listeners that exist. Like there's listeners that exist on certain data sources that are happening in your life, and then there's other sort of like time-based processes that run to kind of pull in larger context across multiple different channels and figure out, okay, what's going on now in the user's current state of their day, right? So those are all running and kicked off locally. If your Mac is off, Spec isn't running because it's kind of the nature of it today. There's a future I see of like a hybrid cloud architecture where we could have some things kick off to the cloud. I think it'd be super cool. But like, again, I think that would have to be privacy first. So it's like in kind of temporal, like how does it kick off a process to the cloud based on the fact that the user just closed their laptop and is running to a meeting, I think that'd be great. But yeah, but everything runs on your Mac. And there's a really cool thing where with your Mac, even if you have it plugged in and closed and locked, Spec is still running and it's still able to do things. So I architected that where if your Mac is unplugged and not connected, then Spec will shut off and it won't hold kind of like a background state in your Mac. But right now, if you like lock your Mac and you close it, like I sleep, like my bed's right here. I sleep next to my Mac like a good developer does. But I have my Mac plugged in all night, every night. And the cool thing is like I wake up and I come back and it's done all the background research for my meetings and it's like create those drafts for notes and everything. And so, and also if you have like a Mac machine that's like a non-MacBook, I guess, like a Mac Mini or something like that, an iMac, then it would run 24/7 then for you as well. I don't know. I'm kind of fascinated with this idea of like a decentralized, intelligence, infrastructure for the future, right? I mean, obviously we have like the NVIDIA GPUs that are going to keep, we're going to keep making those and building massive data centers. But like, what if like our devices are kind of the servers, and like the data center, or almost our local sort of database for our lives. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the big technical challenge that everyone is like racing to solve at this point.
Right. Yeah.
I'm going to change the topic slightly. So I've never been to San Fran. I'm sure some people on the podcast have. But whenever I listen to or read posts from X, everyone there seems wired. Like they've got a startup, they're meeting this VC. Even if they're working a job, they've got something on the side. Like, what is it about San Fran? Considering you came from Tennessee, like, what is it about the area that makes people so wired?
Yeah, I think, yeah. So like I actually, with my first company, I built it in New York. And I went through Y Combinator in 2019 with it. So I came out here for a few months with that. And then my second company, the fintech, I actually lived here for 6 months, but we ended up kind of, as things unfolded, we hired more and more of the team in New York. So I moved back to New York. And then in 2023, I left New York for 2 years and like traveled, went nomadic. And then I came back to SF at the end of last year after deciding I need to go build something again. I think here, especially like, and now we're in this like once the LLM moment happened, ChatGPT moment happened, and now we're in this age of AI. Like there's more energy here than I've ever seen because I have that kind of perspective of like, but even before COVID, there's a lot of excitement in San Francisco. But I think now it's like multiplied to an exponential of like people really believe that you can build the future here. It's like Peter Thiel talks about this, like the definitive optimism, definitive pessimism, indefinite optimism, indefinite pessimism as this quadrant sort of like outlook on the future and how like different cities and countries and as an individual, you can have this outlook. Do we think the future is going to get better because we can build it? Or do we think the future will get better because of a vague reason? Or do we think that things are going to get worse and here's why? Or do we think things are going to get worse and it's just a fate we have to accept, right? And I think San Francisco, like the people here live in a state of definitive optimism. I think people here really believe like the future is going to be great and we can go build the future and we can actually go build like anything, right? Like we can build, flying cars, or we can build self-driving cars, or we can build intelligence that can do anything. Like I really think if I spent 2 years basically out of the US kind of going to a lot of different other countries and it taught me a lot about myself and about the world and about the U.S. and about San Francisco. And it is like that traveling is what brought me back. Is because I realized like this is really the place where people believe with an electric feeling that is infectious to the people around them that the future can be built by us and we're capable of doing it. And we're capable of building things tomorrow that like today people don't even think is possible, you know? And this is kind of like what I had to embrace a little bit with building Spec because like I was told by really smart friends that it was not possible to build right now. And I think they're, now they're having this experience that's like, wow, okay, it is here. Wow, okay.
Yeah, I guess after you've sat in a Waymo, anything can be possible, right?
There's like literally my street last night. I recorded it. Like I was in a Waymo and there's another Waymo coming. Another Waymo's blocking that Waymo. There's like more Waymos you see here than like regular cars. So it's like, it is kind of like, it's interesting because a lot of SF in general and tech historically has been like less visible. Like if you're building B2B SaaS, like it might be something you use on your computer, but like you walk around the street and the street looks the same. But in San Francisco, increasingly too, we're seeing this where like, I have friends building robotics and I go to their offices and I see like these humanoid robots walking around. It's like, okay, I guess that's happening, right? Like, I guess we're there now too. And then you're here and you see like more driverless cars than cars with drivers on many streets. Tesla's doing the robotaxi here as well. I use that a lot. It's just like, yeah, like it feels like living in a city that's in the future and transitioning towards it.
Is there ever a future for Spec you could see where you would do some sort of hardware, like sort of listening to your conversations in real life type of product, or would you use the phone for that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's possible. I don't think it's going to happen near term.
Yeah.
Part of my thesis on the wearable AI recording devices is that I think a lot of your, I think today at least, so much of your significant data points in your life are somehow digital. Like for example, like I've been on like a weight loss regimen. I've been going to the gym a lot, and so I texted my mom about this, and so then Spec pulled that context in and said, "Oh, you've lost 17 pounds." It's like and you're on and I knew this not from like even my health data. I knew it because I told someone, and so I think like significant today, like so much of your significant data is recorded digitally through you telling someone or someone telling you the thing. And with Spec and how it works, like it's able to pull that context in automatically. I do think there are like instances where it makes a lot of sense. Like if I'm at an office with my colleagues and I'm talking to people, and let's say we all have an in-person meeting and there's no one digital, I think it should still be digitally recorded, right? Because it's significant to the context of our work, and other people should want to know that data. And so I think those moments will be important for a recording device. I also think like I kind of think like these things won't really take off until there's a lot of trust built with whoever's going to build them, because I think we need some sort of network system for this, where actually like each of these devices isn't just like sort of off network, but it's actually like connected to a network where if I meet with you, James, and you on your device have set like I don't want anyone recording me when I meet up with them, like my device should communicate with yours, or maybe it communicates with my phone, and that's how it communicates, and say, hey, James's permission is off, so now my permission's also off. And then when I'm meeting with someone who's comfortable with it, then it does record, right? And I kind of see this like, I mean, maybe it's a little bit hopeful, but I think Spec could maybe be that. Like maybe we introduce in the future some sort of small recording device, but when there's enough people on our network, we're able to turn it into something where you're able to opt in or out, and like those permissions are like fundamentally respected, such that everyone maintains their own privacy while pulling in context they would like to pull in. Because ultimately, it would be really nice to remember some things that we forget, right? Remember things someone told me about a birthday party they'd like me to come to on Friday. If they don't text me, I would still like to remember that. But we also need to like keep privacy paramount and like respect people's autonomy in that way and choices.
Yeah, and you don't want a point where sort of humans get lazy at even listening to their friends because they know the AI device is going to like recap it for them later.
It's
It's
true.
yeah,
It's true. I like this idea of like, especially in San Francisco, there's so much like natural beauty here, but everyone's like you mentioned, Richard, like everyone's working all the time and like, oh, we got to build startups. But I like this idea of like going to a coffee with a friend and like not being on the device and not thinking about the device and not thinking about my digital life, because my digital life's being run by Spec, right? And then if Spec is if something urgent, it could like maybe buzz me or tell me, but like, you know, I think these like moments we have together, like imagine if we could return to these moments like pre-internet, which I guess none of us have really like lived through. Like we kind of grew up in it in some certain ways, but like, you know, there was a life for this for a very long time where people just sat down and talked and had a coffee and like caught up and looked each other's in each other's eyes and just appreciated their presence. And so like that's what there's a very human element to Spec that like um that one ideally can help us return to.
yeah. We came close to that world the other day when AWS went down, but yeah,
That's
I think
sometimes we
there's
need
still
that.
some other
Exactly.
services. I think a lot
Yeah.
of people. It's amazing how many people learn like how much of the internet is on AWS the second it goes down. And there's
It's
always like a
true.
BBC
It's
News
true.
article explaining it to other people because like WhatsApp breaks and just Netflix, Apple TV, like everything. So yeah, it's I like the vision of a world where AI takes away, as we said, sort of the mundane stuff and leaves us as humans.
Not to brag, but Spec has no AWS because we don't have a server. So like there was nothing. It's completely unaffected. I'm like using other
Yeah.
systems, they weren't working. Like Granola had transcribed one of my meetings, but then it apparently uses AWS because then it said like, oh, I can't generate the transcript. But then I had Spec pull in the transcript and do stuff with it. It was great.
So what's your plan going forward now? So Spec's pretty much at a stage where you're sharing it with VCs. What are the next steps?
The VCs get Spec first, apparently. Um, the next steps are like are getting it into other people's hands as well, and basically trying to as rapidly as possible get feedback that it's useful and it's and from our own data, we collect some telemetry data, right? Just like how are people actually opening the app and stuff. I think that part is useful, and it's not going to expose anything of your private information. But I want to make sure people are like are finding real like deep value and utility in Spec before we start expanding more and more. But we're going to see. I think it's very fluid. I have a very fluid outlook on the next few weeks and the rest of this year of what it looks like with sharing Spec out. But we have a lot of people who are like DMing us like almost every day. Hey, I'm on the wait list. Hey, can I please use this? And I want to get in their hands, and I want it to be like deliver for them what they want. And I think I'm feeling positive about this. I'm just like, I think Spec even said this to me today. It's like you're like being too perfectionist with shipping. You need to make sure you're shipping like, you know, like ship the product. I'm like, thank you. I will ship you. Yes. So
Are
shipping
you
the product.
using
Yeah.
Are you using BetterStack for your telemetry data?
I need to. A lot of it's been like so. It depends on if you. I haven't talked to you already about this. It depends on if you guys like can plug in on like the app level. But if you can, then of course. Just like the architecture is so like um different, and then it's not, you know, like we're not collecting stuff directly to a server somewhere. But I mean, fully endorse BetterStack. I've known Neurai for like since 2017. I think like I met the BetterStack team when it was like 4 people, and I've kept meeting them ever since. Like, you guys are phenomenal. Huge endorsement for all the listeners out there.
Thank you very much. One thing I was curious on actually is how much of your previous startup experience you think is helping you out at the moment. Obviously, you said you did Y Combinator with your first startup, and yeah, how was your experience in Y Combinator, and like did you learn a lot from it? Because obviously, it's sort of like the startup school that is sort of everyone wants to go to.
I think I learned a lot in ways that probably aren't as talked about publicly or like perceived publicly when people think about Y Combinator. Because obviously you go there and it's like like the partners are like the most brilliant people in the startup ecosystem. They're incredible. Like I was very fortunate. Like our group partners were Tim Brady, Kevin Hale, and Michael Seibel. And they're just like very direct and brilliant. And like, you know, the amount of times Michael called us out on doing stupid things, but was also like, I think the quote was like, I'm not your parent. Like, do what you want. You know, you're the founders of your own company. Um, like it was a phenomenal experience. I think like the biggest lesson from Y Combinator that I learned, that I carry with me today is like choosing what to work on. Interestingly enough, and it wasn't like as much of a direct lesson as it was. My batch had, I think, 201 companies. Now it's smaller batches. They do quarterly instead of yearly, semi-yearly, which is great. But my batch 201 companies, and like Deal was in my batch. And I got to know Shwo a bit through that in the past few years. And it's like I saw like Deal go from like such an early stage company at the time to like I think they had just pivoted to doing their core like hiring platform like as we were coming out of YC. And I saw other companies doing other things that were just really brilliant and interesting. And you know, we were working on building access, like making intercom system for apartment buildings, and like making hardware for that, and making software for that, and like it was a really hard industry to sell into, and it was really hard. And like, a lot of landlords, like with existing buildings, I think understandably don't care to like spend money frivolously on like a product that helps the experience for the resident, just because it's going to make the experience better for them. Like it's a business for them, right? And I think like I kind of like going through what Combinator showed me, like you can choose to work on like kind of whatever you want, and you can choose to work on problems that really excite you and become big successful companies. And it's kind of the whole definition of a startup is to build not just a company, but something that can like grow fast and scale. It was interesting actually, like when you get into Y Combinator, I don't know how you do it now, but this was late 2018, so quite a while ago. Sam Altman was the president, and he came in and talked to us, and he gave like the most interesting speech. He came in and said, first off, you guys like you guys have, admit some of you guys will have problems with your companies. You'll have things you'll want to like hide from us. Don't. You're in now. Just tell us. It's fine. We're not going to kick you out. Like if your prototype really doesn't work, we're not going to kick you out. It's fine. But then he gave this like really small, but like I still carry it today, speech where he said like, look, with what you are all building, you're all trying to build ambitious things. But when you try to build something ambitious, the world will often tell you that you're being too ambitious and you need to be more grounded, and you need to be more realistic. And it'll try to beat you down. And he said, our job here at YC is to tell you to be more ambitious and to empower you, and to tell you can do it. Like when the world says you can't, we're going to tell you that you can. And we're going to like do everything we can to make you, like from this moment now, which is before the batch started, to when the batch ends, to make you the most ambitious versions of yourselves that you could possibly be in your lives. And I was so like, I had like chills. I was struck by this. I was like, wow. And this is like before like, right? Like it's so interesting because you kind of look at these people like Sam Altman at the time, obviously was a successful entrepreneur, but like OpenAI was like a nonprofit like research lab. And like now it's like one of the most exciting companies on the entire planet. And every single person I know knows who Sam Altman is. But at this time, like, you know, my mom wouldn't have known who he was. And I think there's like lessons here like that you can like carry through to everything you do. And they become really, really valuable. So like it was part of, you know, these sorts of lessons for me is like choosing what to work on, and then choosing and then like empowering myself to be like extraordinarily ambitious is kind of like what led me even to the idea for Spec. And initially I had a moment where I was like, this sounds like something other companies should do. It sounds like something that other companies are probably working on. Should I do this? And then I was like, I'm not going to wait for someone else to do this. I'm going to be really ambitious and go after it. And maybe, you know, if I learn new data, that changes. But otherwise, like, you know, I'm going to be really ambitious and take these lessons with me. So that's what I learned from YC. I know that was a long answer.
No, it was great. That's a sort of a fascinating insight into what Y Combinator makes people believe. And I mean, they have a good track record, so it clearly works.
Yeah. I was just going to say quickly with my last companies, I think like I learned a lot of lessons around just like hiring people who are really, really ambitious as well, and really like are super committed to what you're doing, so much so that you don't have to like Jaya, who I work with, is like, she's like one of the best people easily I've ever worked with, if not the best. And one of the reasons is like she's just like so committed to to the idea of spec. Spec is kind of a weird thing where like some people even today, um, who I've shown it to are still kind of like I don't know, they still are skeptical, or they're still kind of like don't believe that we can become like a very successful company. They still think like we're gonna get cloned by other companies, which maybe we will. But like I'm a big believer in like the product itself, and like that we can, if we're so committed to the product and like the experience for people and the vision, and if people are attached to that vision and idea as well, we can build something great. And I think like you need people who are like real believers like in your company. Like, so like, you know, that's what I kind of focus on now is like who's so like such a deep believer that they're like, you know, working on this is work, but it's also like the manifestation of the future they want to live in. Right. And I think that's very different from just like putting in the hours on something. And so, you know, that's how I think about it. Hiring for spec. We are hiring for spec. I'll plug that really quickly. Of course, you know, if you work with the LLMs and you're quite savvy with understanding these models, I'd love to talk to you. But if I'm allowed to plug that, James.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fine.
Of course.
It's sort of brought up for me a question of how you find spec. Does it get better and better each time one of these new models comes out? Because obviously they always say they have good improvements. Are you seeing sort of a good jump from when Claude Sonnet 4 started, 4.5 and so on?
Yeah, 4 was kind of the first model that, with given all the context, could really on with the human level intuition, like prioritize, understand like priorities, understand like the kind of the semblance of a human in a based on all this digital on all this data, right? The digital corners of your life. But even 4 and Gemini 2.5 and these other models I tried at that time, they still weren't good enough at being agentically generally agentically helpful to you as a user. So like what I mean by that is like I couldn't say, hey, I have this meeting, and it'd say, oh, cool. Like, okay, let me look up James. Oh, James is a podcaster. Oh, it's a podcast meeting. Let me look up like the channel, and let me like watch some of the videos and like understand the company and understand the full context. Like these models still couldn't do that. The first one that could do that was GPT-5. So like that came out now, it was early August. That's been out for like 6 weeks. When that came out, I was over the moon and beyond. I was like, this is incredible. This model now is like so brainy. It's so smart. Like the behavior of that model is like, it goes incredibly deep. If you're using the cursor, it's like with high reasoning, it will run for like 10 minutes sometimes on a problem because it wants to make sure it solves the problem, right? And I was fascinated and so excited by it, and I immediately plugged it into Spec. And then what I found is like talking to that model with Spec was much more dry. It was much more like direct. It kind of lacked human level like empathy and cheeriness. So I said, okay, this is an interesting sort of architectural sort of like fork in the road where it's like maybe the anthropic models are great to talk to, or better to talk to with the product we want to deliver. And then GPT-5 is better at a lot of these underlying tasks. And so that's kind of like some of the architecture I built out now is like using some of the OpenAI models for those things. And then the voice of Spec is an anthropic model. Sonnet 4.5 launched a few weeks ago, and then Haiku 4.5 launched around like a few days ago at the end of last week. The Haiku 4.5 model coming out was like the best thing that's happened to me this whole year. I was so overjoyed. And I told the Anthropic team this yesterday. I was like, this is the best thing. This is incredible because it's an unbelievably good model. It has high reasoning capabilities. And for the tasks that Spec does, it is about the same fidelity as Sonnet 4.5, but it's a third of the cost. So like, I guess there's a higher level question maybe that we're getting to here, which is like, is inference actually getting cheaper? And I would say absolutely, 100%. Like it's unbelievable. Like the Haiku model is unbelievably good. It's obviously way better than any model that existed like a year ago, and it's now like vastly cheaper than so many of them. And so like I think there's like we're heading for that direction continuously. For a product like Spec, it's gonna be great for us because it allows us to keep doing more and more for people in the background without it costing us so much that we have to throttle it.
Yeah, I suppose that almost raises a question. I don't know if you can answer. What would the
Of course.
monetization for Spec look like? Because obviously it does cost you to infer with those models.
Yeah, I think OpenAI with ChatGPT and then of course Cursor as well. These companies have kind of like blazed a nice trail that we can kind of walk now of like expectations for these sorts of products. So, you know, the likely pricing for Spec will be some sort of lower level pricing in the range of 20, 30-ish dollars a month. That gives you kind of like every experience, James, that you're having now with it, which is, I think, hopefully going to be a great experience. And then we'll have some sort of like higher tier for people who want higher usage, people who want these other more computationally expensive models. Again, for a lot of the use cases you'd have with it, I think the less expensive plan will be better. We're gonna have a free plan as well, and you know, I haven't fully decided what this looks like, but I do think the free plan will have a much higher reliance on these local models, right? Ideally, there could be a free plan that's fully local models and that's it. And it's just like full free. And it costs us nothing. And it costs you nothing. And you get to experience that. But in my mind, Spec's useful for like personal things. You may have already seen this a bit, like kind of how it knows your personal life. So maybe if you want to ask it to help you navigate a relationship with someone or a conversation, local models might be able to do that fairly well. But then and stuff for work, like preparing you for meetings, I think that's a great place to use these other models, and that's a great there's a great reason to pay for that product, right? Because it's going to help you be more productive. Like I think for companies, we kind of have a B2B plan as well that we're going to execute on going into next year. For companies, Spec will be like really interesting because we're going to be able to do multiplayer sort of functions that aren't possible yet today with any other product. So, like imagine your daily stand up today. Each person has to go individually figure out like, what do I need to do? What do I need to, what did I do yesterday? What am I going to do today? You're like getting your morning coffee. You're trying to think through this. It's the same problem we've discussed here. With Spec right now, today is a single player. It will prepare you for that meeting. You'll go into it and then you'll be able to kind of say, hey, I did this. I'm going to do this. And it's awesome. But imagine in an environment where everyone has Spec, maybe then the specs can talk to each other and kind of sort out what happened yesterday. And they can kind of do the meeting such that, maybe as humans, we still kind of review what was discussed with the specs and kind of like understand like up to the moment, like what each of us are focused on. But as humans, we can go focus on like our lives with each other and like this relationship, like the relationships we have. And it kind of allows us to focus more on the human elements, and the work elements can be kind of managed more and more by Spec. And so in my mind, like an organization's efficiency is really like, in many ways, kind of determined by how communication happens, sort of peer to peer and then like vertically, right? So like who understands what's happening? Are things being followed up on in a timely manner with deadlines being hit? If deadlines aren't hit, what are the roadblockers? And so there's so much interesting stuff I think we can do with that in terms of, I don't think every company in the future is going to be pure AI. I think we're going to have humans working. I think that's a great thing. But I think, how can we help have AI as this like, layer across our organizations, across every level of them to make them run better and kind of allow the humans to connect with each other better in the time that we have with each other.
There was one other question that's just come to mind as well. Sorry,
yeah,
a bit sporadic, but
of course.
Do you see any value in MCP servers or not? Because you're sort of on the OS level.
It's a great question, and it's a great question because I think the assumption for a lot of people is that they'll ask me, technical people, they'll say like, "Oh, it runs off MCP, right?" And today it uses no MCP. Everything's a system level integration, or like just direct API. I think MCP is like great for the use cases that it should be used for. I think understandably, like there's been a lot of excitement about MCP becoming this like super critical part of how like consumers really use AI in the future. And I don't know that I buy that as much. maybe MCP in the future is abstracted away a bit and it becomes like kind of like the App Store on iPhone. Um, that could be a version of the future that makes sense. I think in my usage of MCP, I've experienced like issues with like reliability, with like the model kind of paying attention to the MCP server and being there sometimes. It's like a lot of things. Like LLMs, work with LLMs, like they're so indeterminate and they're so nuanced. And so like the injection of anything into your prompt or any introduction of tools or the description of these tools and how the tools should be used, like this is so it's so nuanced and it's so delicate. And so like, I think we're still early with how MCP will play out. I think it will have like probably a huge role in the future of a lot of this tech, but it may not look the same as it does today. In the same way that I think like prompting should also really go away for the average person. I think the prompt should be your life. Maybe you'll you'll still do text input, you'll still do some voice input as well. But like, there's this idea that like, this assumption that like everything should be a prompt. Like to do a task, you should go prompt some sort of AI product to do that. Like Spec today, of course, has a text box, and I think it always will. But like ideally, 99% of you using Spec is not even a text box. It's Spec popping up in an app saying, "Hey, here's this information in context. Do you want to do this?" And it's kind of auto completing things without you having to ask it to complete it. So that's how I view MCP, I guess, and I added on the prompt, but yeah.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I think that sort of the app store idea that you said is the way that I see MCP going. Like ChatGPT will just have an app store where MCP is being used behind the scenes, and sort of the average consumer doesn't really want to know about MCP. They just want to know how to connect an app into whatever LLM they're using. And yeah, it does sort of feel like it's been sort of the escape hatch at the moment to get LLMs to connect to other things. So sort of your approach of doing the OS level
understandable
is a lot better. There is one more question I'm going to ask, Ben. Do you have any sort of any hot takes on the tech industry or software development in general? Is there anything you can think of, like a spicy take?
Ooh, a spicy take. There's I guess there's like some definitely, but it's like we're in such a moment where there's such contrarianism and then like such like violent like anti-contrarianism that like it's unclear what is a contrarian take at this moment, but I don't know. I think like people shouldn't like launch products and pretend they do things that they don't to do, or like launch them in like states where they barely work. And I think it's a weird moment. We're a weird moment with the startup culture where it's been really normalized to do this. And I guess like call me old school, but like back in my day when I went through YC, like it would have been it would have made you look really bad if you like launched a product and if you launched a product and like it didn't work, and then or like you pretended that it did work. I don't know. Like obviously when you're kind of in these moments, you have to kind of decide, you have to play the meta a little bit. You have to realize what the meta is and like play it a little bit. So I'm not trying to like condemn everyone or anything. Like we did a launch video with an invite only product, recently, but like I do think like it's important not to present your product as doing something that it doesn't do. And I think there's been a lot of general damage done to like the AI industry where people have promised that products can do like insane capabilities, and then you download it, you use it, and you're like, this literally does nothing. It connects to none of my tools. Like, it barely even works. Like it crashes my computer. It's why I've been so careful with Spec of like, we're carefully getting into people's hands as it's working, and not everyone go download this so I can like magically make some MRR in 2 days and then like raise off of that 3 days later, and then everyone churns, right? I think like you only have there's this idea of like you can keep launching, and you can, but I think you really have a moment where people say, "Oh, what's this?" and they try it, and that moment needs to be good. Like, especially in the world of MVPs, like the moment needs to be remarkable, because if your product sucks, people are going to say, "Oh, this sucks," and then they're never going to like use it again. And you're going to say, "Oh, guys, like now it's great, and we raised more money, now it's better." I don't think so. You know, you have one chance. It's like going on a first date with someone. It's a horrible first date. 6 months later, do you want to go on another date again? Like maybe not. Probably not. Right. Um, I have another take real quick, which I think like is like vibe coding gets too much hate. Like I think like the models are remarkably good. And I think you should know what's happening in your code base. But I think there's a weird thing I've seen with like a lot of people who are pre-AI developers who are, of course, know their craft and they're great at it, but there's like a hate towards like, oh, like I've heard this from engineers, like, and he vibe coded that. And I think like maybe vibe coding is not the right word, but like, you know, AI programming, there's something else here that should be not vibe coding. Vibe coding
Yeah.
might be like Lovable created my app and I don't even know what like an if else loop is, like, you know, like an if else statement is, and like that, then you're vibe coding. But like when you're directing, you know, Cursor or Claude Code to build a lot of code out for you, that's not vibe coding. I think that's just the new way of engineering, right? Like Michael Trull talks about this with Cursor, like they want to build a new way to build software. And I think that is what's happening. And I think if you don't embrace this as a developer, like you're literally like the dinosaur with the meteorite coming in. The meteorite, I guess, has an OpenAI logo and an Anthropic logo and a Cursor logo.
Yeah, no, I think the vibe coding sort of terminology is quite good for people who, as we said, sort of don't have experience in development before. But I don't think anyone just using AI now is vibe coding. I think you're just literally using a tool to assist you. It's literally like when IDEs started to get good and make suggestions. It's like another form of that.
Of course,
So yeah, I can agree.
like I
With that.
said, I've built the version of Spec you're using basically since June, and this would have been impossible years ago, like, or even 1 year ago, it would have been impossible, right? Um, it's because of I'm able to build things with AI, like, and so like I think as an entrepreneur, like if you want to, or if, as a builder, abstract away entrepreneur, if you want to build something today, you got to use these tools. And you've got to be very serious about getting good with them. It's like cars being invented, and you're like, haha, like me and my carriage with my horse, like I'll never use one of those. Like, cool. It will literally leave you in the dust, right?
I think that's yeah. I can agree with all of those takes really. So yeah, pretty happy. With
Maybe
that.
it's not too spicy. Next time I'll have to come with a. I'll have to ask Spec, read through everything I've sent people, and come up with a spicy take.
Yeah, find my most controversial statements in my text.
It could do that. It could do that. Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I'm worried to try that personally. Maybe you can go through my old sort of group chats I have with my mates from school and be like, find some
That could
dirt on
be
them.
interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
That's a dangerous tool, actually.
That's why your data needs to stay local. Yeah.
Yeah, that definitely is. That's all we have time for. Thank you very much for tuning in to another Better Stack podcast. Thank you very much to Ben for joining us on this one. And yeah, follow us wherever you get your podcasts on and leave us a rating on those platforms as well. I've been your host, James. Goodbye.
Bye from Richard.
Bye from Andres.
Bye from Ben. Thank you. This
Time
is
went
great,
really
guys.
quickly for me. Yeah.
Yeah.